I'm gonna reroute the thermo drive.
Electronic mail failure.
Stored forever in a virtual library.
Computers can't swim.
They can now.
Data turbines. The website. It's alive.
Movies
And mainframes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Movies and Mainframes, the podcast that is going to explore and discuss the representation of technology in media. I am your host, Andy, and today I have a special episode for you. I am going to be talking to a published author. That's right, getting fancy on Movies and Mainframes. Today, my guest has written a book. It is called The Comedy of Computation, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Obsolescence. I had a chance to read it. There's some very interesting themes that are explored in this book that I'm excited to talk to the author about today. So let's get him on here. I want to welcome the Associate Professor of Literature at MIT, Dr. Benjamin Mangrum. How you doing, Ben?
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, thank you for taking the time. Like I said, I had a chance to read your book, a lot of interesting stuff in there. But before we jump into our discussion, I just want to read a quick, brief description of your book just to set the stage for our listeners.
Sure. Sounds good.
It says, in this cultural history of the computer, Benjamin Mangrum shows that comedy has been central to how we've made sense of the technology's sweeping effects on public life and private experience. Mangrum assembles an extensive archive of work by writers, filmmakers, programmers, engineers, and other technologists who have coupled comedy with computation. Many have used comedy to make the computer seem ordinary. Others have tried to stage the assimilation of computers within corporate life as a kind of comic drama. Mangrum describes these and many other ways in which comedy and computation have come together as a new genre of experience, the comedy of computation. So, all right, now that we've set the stage for a little bit what your book is going to explore, I want to start at the early beginnings of you actually writing this book. So if you writing this book was a movie script, what was the inciting incident that made you write it? Was it, did you come across a factoid that sent you down a rabbit hole? Were you having a discussion with a colleague or friend over cocktails and got on this line of thought and wanted to explore it more? What made you start it?
Yeah. So I came across this play, which I later learned was adapted into a film. The play was called The Desk Set, and by the playwright William Marchant. And what was really interesting to me about the play was that it, as far as I've been able to tell, it's the first play that premiered on Broadway to include a computer. And it was a romantic comedy. And so this was a really curious sort of like fact of literary history of the history of the computer, which is that the computer makes its Broadway premiere in a romantic comedy. And I think, for someone who reads a lot of science fiction, I watch a lot of science fiction film. I sort of had anticipated that other genres, right, would have been a better sort of first home for the computer. But so it was really curious to me, really striking that the computer makes its debut in a romantic comedy. And so this sort of set me down this path of wanting to think about how computers and comedy come together. And what I found was actually they come together often. That often when engineers or corporations or even writers and filmmakers, when they're trying to make sense of comedy's, sort of role in our lives, when they're interested, in thinking about computers and their roles in our lives, they're, use comedy as a sort of form for making sense of the computer. And yeah, it was a really curious discovery.
Yeah, and it's pretty early too, because it's like 1952 or something that play is written or debuts. Yeah, it's the early 50s, right?
It is. Yeah. It's the mid 50s, and the film adaptation is 57, which is sort of super, still super early, very early. And at that point, obviously, like there are only a handful of corporations that are leasing out computers, right? They don't very few even own computers.
They're the size of rooms at that point in time. And they store a whopping 56, megs or whatever. So it's crazy that it's that early. And like you said, of all things, a romantic comedy. Which so let's talk about, you explore these themes in your book through the lens of comedy. So why choose comedy? Why was that important for you for comedy? Because I would argue that if you explore it through the lens of drama and all the trappings that come with drama, with like mistrust, paranoia, dystopian, there's like, in my case, there's more fuel for the fire. There's more things to pull from. So why was comedy important to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I'm not saying like it's comedy and only comedy as this sort of way we've made sense of computers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Computing technology. But I think, one reason that comedy is really important is, scholars often call it like the genre of the ordinary. Like, comedy makes things that are weird or incongruous or unexpected. They can in some ways make those experiences feel ordinary or seem ordinary. So I think like, especially in the 50s and 60s, computing technology, these huge mainframes were so strange, weird, new. And in some ways, like comedy was a form for making these new technologies seem ordinary, seem like they could be a part of our daily lives, whether it's in the office place or later in the 90s, in our homes, our bedrooms, right? So, so comedy is this, I think, genre that's really important for making things seem ordinary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Your title, it's obviously evocative of Dr. Strangelove. Why did you choose Dr. Strangelove? What does that film mean to you? How does it pertain to the book in your eye?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are all these conversations about whether AI will displace people like me, people like literature professors who, we read books, we talk with students about books, we write papers, we read papers that students write, and AI is, it's a threat, right, to that kind of like educational model, to the kinds of things that I do. And so, my colleagues and I, we're constantly having this conversation about whether we're obsolete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're, what is it that the humanities have to offer? The study of like novels, the study of film, philosophy. What is it that we have to offer in this like new technological age? It's an important conversation to have. And by having it, it doesn't mean that we've like given up the ghost or whatever, but yeah, we want to, ask those questions. And so, Dr. Strangelove, it's a great film for kind of having like, like kind of gallows humor about the nuclear bomb. Right.
Yeah.
And, about other just kind of threats to the modern world, to civilization. And so, yeah, I think I was trying to conjure that spirit, right, of having some kind of gallows humor about the future of the kind of work I do.
Yeah, let's keep on to that because I have that later in my discussion. But so in your book, I mean, you're really looking at the past like 100 years of computers, technology, automatons, this machinery, and how it's being marketed towards us, and the language around it. And you trace these fears of, especially in the beginning and still now, how these new technologies can replace the more labor intensive side of our workforce. But now that there's real fears of replacing like the white collar jobs, the higher thought jobs in the workforce. But for you yourself, what are your fears within the education system? I mean, are you actually afraid of being replaced by an AI professor? Are you more afraid of students not earning the knowledge? Because we've all seen like people are on Zoom calls with job recruiters and they have a Chat GPT window open, or anybody can get any paper written for them within a split second that's formatted perfectly. Like, what are the real fears, and what is your timeline for these fears in your head?
Yeah, right. I mean, so the fears, I think they date back to the 40s, at least, like the 1940s, with just this idea that this new technology, the computer, could process data, could organize information, in ways that is just superior to, professionals. So like in the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of managers at corporations who thought computers were going to replace them. That, basically the middle manager would go out of work. Right.
Right.
So my point is it's an old anxiety. And I think like college professors, we inherit that long tradition of anxiety, and, it's too soon to tell. Like, honestly, it's too soon to tell how, AI is going to change education. There are pronouncements of all sorts about, its effects, and we just don't know. I mean, it's just so early in the stage of things, but yeah, I mean, I'm less worried about like students just using AI to write a paper, because that happens. That's going to happen. But also like students have used other technologies to just like fudge work, before AI, like that kind of use of a technology to just get an assignment done. It's not, it didn't begin in 2022. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm more worried about like what the technology does to our ability to think and like talk about issues that matter. And I, again, it's kind of too early to know what the effects will be. But I mean, that's my biggest worry. Like, will people still read hard books?
Yeah.
Or like watch experimental films, or how does this technology affect our just like habits of thought? I think those are the things that concern me.
Absolutely. What is your personal relationship with computers and technology? Is it you've always been on the computer? Did you have a moment in time where your family household got a computer and it was a big deal? And like, what was your entry point into computers? Was it gaming or schoolwork or, that kind of, like, what is your relationship with computers?
Yeah, I remember. So I was young, maybe around 10 or so, when my family got a desktop, a big chunky Dell, I think it was, some kind of Dell. And and we set it up in the, dining room. And I remember like going into a chat room for the first time, and just like not knowing how that worked, and like saying stupid stuff in a chat room. Yeah, I mean, I think I guess since I was so young, even before that, I played video games constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was a gamer as a kid for sure, and even now, like, still like to, play video games. So I mean, I guess you'd say I was like born with it, right?
Right. I want to go back to. So your title's evocative of Dr. Strangelove. One of the things I do like in your book is that your chapter titles are named after the Friends episode convention of the one with. And I believe it's in your chapter about authenticity where you talk about that now help me with this word, because I've never actually said it out loud. The genericity. Is that how you say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
The genericity of those titles of the one with serves a dual purpose. Do you remember what you talked about in your book about that? Because I really like the way you explained it, if you wouldn't mind for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the, genre is one, like way we talk about comedy, right? It's sort of has these conventions to it. So some of the conventions in like TV series, like Friends, they follow a kind of plot across an episode, and there are certain like kinds of jokes that tend to recur, and those are genre conventions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one like really small genre convention is just how the episodes in that series are titled. So the one about the finger or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I mean, you have no clue what those titles, if you were just to look at like Wikipedia and look at the listing of the episode titles, you'd have no clue what they're about, right? Like they're just so obscure. But in some ways, if you watch the episode, it sort of like becomes like an inside joke, like the title of that episode. It makes sense once you kind of like join the Friends, right?
You're right. You
watch the episode and know what the one about George Stephanopoulos or whatever is about, right? And yeah, so I think like genre on the one hand, it's this abstract idea. You know, it has these conventions that range across different episodes or different TV shows, or, you know, in the case of novels, different novels, right? So genre convention is really abstract and kind of impersonal. But there's also this way that genre, you know, gives you a kind of intimacy with, in this case, you know, friends, right? What you kind of like are rooting for Ross and Rachel or whatever. I mean, there's a way, and it seems abstract, but also kind of intimate. And so I'm really interested in that dynamic, how comedy's genre conventions, like on the one hand are so sort of general, like there's always a happy ending of a romantic comedy, that sort of thing. But there's also a kind of like intimacy that's involved in your experience of comedy. So I'm interested in that dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. I like that explanation because the generic nature of the title also just breeds this, you know, secret handshake, so to speak, of, you know, between people in the know, where you form an actual relationship with the material. And I just really like that because I never really thought about it, but it's like, oh yeah, the fact that it is generic makes it more intimate for people in the know. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's a fun dynamic that, I mean, I like Friends a lot. I think, it's a great show. And I think they're smart about that dynamic for sure.
Well, I have to ask, since we're on the subject of it, who's your favorite friend? You got to have one.
Oh, Joey.
Joey?
Yeah. I think
I'm a Ross guy. So yeah.
Oh, are you? Okay. What about Ross's? Is it that?
So Ross is it's half and half. I think David Schwimmer's like an excellent slapstick comedian, doing the pratfalls, the leather pants with the lotion. I mean, that whole thing I can crack up. It's the only thing the dynamic of the Ross and Rachel just played itself out and got old. So like those scenes and dynamic just would, you know, be like, okay, come on, let's move on. Let's find something else to do. But when he's playing pure comedy, it was gold for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I think with Joey, it's just like when he, you know, the episode in which he tries to like learn French. It's sort of it's just stuck in my mind. I think, you know, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's because that's my relationship to French. Every time I try to speak it, I just sound like Joey. And I have, you know, I'm just a bumbling fool. So yeah, I think he's so funny.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. In your research, like I said, you really span this 100-year period almost. Do you have any thoughts on patterns on how the public, how we view computers? Is it like a rinse and repeat of, hey, new technology, mistrust, slow adoption? Or what did you see any patterns in looking at all these materials over the past 100 years? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are patterns. I don't think they're like universal patterns though, right? So I think like some segments of the population, there's a kind of tendency that over and over again across 80 years, you know, that segment will have a kind of tendency to respond in one way, right? And then a different kind of segment of the population will have a different tendency that might be in conflict. So, you know, for example, if you're worried about, you know, losing your manufacturing job because of automation, you know, then you know, romantic comedy is not your genre,
right?
Right. I mean, there's a kind of more bleak or slapstick or gallows humor that might be more common for that set of concerns and that kind of labor. And so, yeah, I think that's one version, that if you're part of a community who's worried about like losing your job, and that's a real threat about, you know, the automation of your work, then some types of comedy are going to be more common for you. But one thing that I did find is really quite common is for like kind of white collar office workers. What for you know, really strange reasons to me, romantic comedy just becomes this common recurring genre. I mean, there's so many. You know, there's like Jexy, which is a recent film that's sort of about social media and the smartphone and kind of the displacement of like clerical work. I mean, but going back again to the desk set, like it's a common genre for how we've experienced office work and computing. And yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive in some ways.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, but yeah, you've got Mail, Her, all these other films, and I'm more steeped in the movie and television side of it, but you have lots of examples in literature as well. But it's yeah, that is interesting. I wouldn't think that those would pair up, but
yeah.
All right, so go with me here. It's not really a question; it's more of a thought I was having while I was reading your book. So in your early chapter, where you're really just talking about racism, racial biases, and things like that, you show marketing examples like from the 1920s of these new machines, these automatons that are, going to replace your labor side of your workforce, whether they're on the assembly line or whatever. And in those marketing materials, I mean, it's not even subtle. It is just overtly racist language of, in one example you showed, it says, "You will own slaves again." And it's like, whoa, okay, expect it, but still reading it's tough stuff. But so I'm looking at that, right? And how the language around this new technology is just, steeped in racism. And as you say in your book, plantation traditions of using language like slave, servant, master. And then as we go along as a society in America, and that language softens to where it's now your helper, your friend, your companion. Now that we're on this new dawn of AI, it seems like, right, for the past couple of years, for the first time in my lifetime, it seems like there's now happening quote unquote slurs for the technology itself. Like I am seeing language in social media and other places for like clanker, canner, tech bro. And tech bros really seem to enter the mainstream lexicon in the past like 5 or 6 years. And it's never used in a good light. It's always, dripping with mistrust and malice. And like I said, not much of a question, but I just found it interesting that, this racist language is used to market the technology. And now as a society, and just for our listeners, I'm not trying to compare the plight of minorities in this country to, oh, poor computers now. But I just find that the language that we use is very interesting, where it's used for marketing. And now we're kind of using it towards the technology. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm not arguing that we like think about our computers like plantation owners thought about slaves. That's not, it's not a one-to-one correspondence, but like, and I know that's not what you're saying either. But it is really interesting if you like look at the history of robots, automatons, and, other kind of like early automated technology. So much of the kind of trappings, the language, the imagery was indebted to slavery, to like this idea of, slaves. I cite a lot of examples of this, in the book where, plantation owners thought about slaves as machines. And
right.
So that like established a sort of way of thinking about, kind of the machinery of labor, and that continued into the 20th century and really kind of the first automatons, the first robots, and some of the earliest computers. They inherited that set of assumptions that like there's this inhuman thing in the plantation master's idea, way of thinking. There's this inhuman thing. I'm going to make it produce. I'm going to force it to do this labor. And that kind of idea, fed into some of the earliest automatons, robots, computers, right? That, what's a computer in the 1950s? It's an inhuman object, an inhuman machine that I'm going to make it do stuff for me.
Right.
So yeah, so I think like that's an important aspect of the history of like how we think about automated technology. And so I'm not saying that's the only way we should think about the history of the computer, but it's a really important dimension to the argument. And so, yeah, I try to trace it as best as I can.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I found that chapter really interesting. Just because there were certain things in the chapter that I just never really thought about. And then things that you were pointing out where I was like, oh man, is TikTok from, Return to Oz, is he racist? Maybe. So it's just interesting because for me as just I just consume media. I just watch television shows, I watch movies and everything like that. And whenever I see a robot, I just think it's a robot. But then you in that chapter you're specifically talking about the book, but you cite all these examples where it's essentially you're describing his performance like a minstrel performance with the kind of language and pitter patter that he has. Yeah. And it like I said, just very interesting. And moving forward, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, that's just going to be another lens in which I view my media now.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it in some ways it kind of makes sense that like there's this thing that's so different from us, this robot, this automaton, this machine. And, especially engineers in the middle of the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, when they were thinking about difference, it was from, they were using racial patterns for understanding this difference. And when they were trying to think about labor, that was also racial, right? Because of the, in the United States, the history of the racialization of labor. So yeah, again, it's not surprising, but it's also so startling. So like one example I talk about is this robot that was made by Westinghouse. It wore sort of coveralls and had, I guess it was, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. Goodyear rubber over its mechanical parts so that it looked like a black laborer. And sort of the whole like point of the of this particular robot was to help audiences think about a black laborer,
right?
And essentially that's what the physical trappings of the robot was supposed to conjure. And so, so again, it's an unseemly part of the history of the technology, but again, it's one that we need to have in mind at least when we're looking at contemporary robots, right?
Right. And yeah, no, it's wild. It's crazy. And so we have that view long time ago. We're looking now at like modern computing. I know you've expressed your fears in the field of tech, field of education, but you've been looking at this stuff and research in your book for a while now. Do you think we're going to find a balance with these new technologies fairly quickly, or do you think we're headed for some strange days and a lot of trial and error before we find that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the strange days scenario is actually the more likely one. Not necessarily that we're all, going to be like out of jobs in 10 years, or that, the AIs will be our overlords or whatever. But I think the technology of AI specifically, and the other ways that like so many aspects of finance, of other like facets of the economy are digitized. I mean, they have been for a while, but that's actually with AI increasing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the transformation is just so significant that I think strange times are ahead for sure. Yeah. Yeah. But I think if someone were to give you a map for what that would look like, they'd be bananas. There's no way to tell. I mean, who knows? But the more likely scenario is, strange times are ahead.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you there. Your chapter on authenticity, you talk about the authenticity gap between, what these companies and the marketing say about these new technologies, how it's going to change your life, how it's going to, just be the next best thing. And then the actual way society views it and adopts it, there's that gap, and you explore it, through this, this lens in comedy. But what, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest factor for that authenticity gap? Do you think it's just as simple as false claims, or do you think it's an adoption problem, like not enough people are adopting the new technology, or is it integration with, like, oh, it still has to work within our current and maybe outdated systems? And, so what do you think is actually causing, or the biggest factor for that gap? Because I agree, there is a gap where, it's going to change your life. No, I use it for a shopping list, like that. That's all it is. So what do you think?
Yeah, right. Or sort of like processing or like a file compression algorithm or something. It's not actually going to change your lives. It's just going to mean we're going to get emails quicker, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I think that a lot of the sort of like imagery and like ideals of the tech industry are sincerely held. Like it's not, of course there are some companies that dress up their operations, their products in really idealistic language just to sell them. Like, of course that happens, but I don't think like, programmers, tech workers go into that industry with that like sort of deceptive sleight of hand in mind. Like, I think a lot of times the ideals are sincerely held. But yeah, I mean, it's in some ways like that gap comes from the fact that technology actually is always going to produce results that are, divergent, right? So like some good things and some bad things. And sometimes the bad things undermine the good things, right? So like technology, it can't save the world exclusively. And its attempts to save the world will also make it worse. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's kind of the dynamic that often happens, is that in these sort of ideals that like a particular startup or whatever, in its attempts to make like whatever our commute to work better, are gonna in some ways make the commute to work better, but in other ways they're gonna displace workers, or they're going to like make us less connected to one another. Or, I mean, there's just going to be sort of like side effects that are unintended, and that, the technology can't purely save us. It can only partially make things better. And, those side consequences are going to kind of create that gap, right? I think that's part of the dynamic. Does that make sense? I mean,
no, absolutely. I can't help but, as you're talking about this, think about all the articles I've been reading over the past year with these new AI and data centers that are being set up. Like, sure, it's going to make aspects of your life better, but also, I need all of the water and all your resources. And I'm just going to pollute this area. So I mean, it's, in some of these cases, the trade-off is not going to be worth it. And, from my viewpoint, where it's like, well, what's the point if I can't breathe the air or get clean water? But I can make an 8-second video that it's indistinguishable from reality. It's so worth it, so.
No, I mean, this is secondhand. So don't quote me on this, but like I was reading a couple of weeks ago an article about how much water is used to in the cooling systems of the AI to write just one email. And it's basically like to have the AI write one email for you, it's a bottle of water,
Right.
So you're just like pouring out a bottle of water as you ask it to just like save you 30 seconds by writing an email for you. And yet, like, that's also kind of a 30 seconds that's kind of nice to have. Like, it can be so it's complicated, right? I mean, I think, again, those are the dual effects. Before
we met up, I was just looking you up, doing a little bit of research on you, and I happened to be looking at your course, the courses that you teach, with on your website. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at your early coursework from more than like a decade ago, and it seems like in the beginning you're and I'm solely basing this off titles. Obviously, I never took your classes, but it looks like you're dealing with, environmental humanities studies. And then in 2019, just based off titles, that's where like technology starts creeping in, and where, I'm looking at your current coursework, and it really seems revolving around technology. What was the shift for that? Did it kind of coincide with you thinking about this book, or something else? What caused that shift?
Yeah. I mean, so I started teaching. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I started teaching classes on sort of like literature or film and technology around that time. But I'd been doing research on it before that point. I think some of the reasons I had not taught courses in that area, it was just like kind of boring professional reasons having to do with where I was teaching. So, the academic job market for anyone who's not aware of it is really terrible. Like, it's really hard to get a teaching position, and to get one that where you can like buy groceries. It's like really hard. So, and most of the, most academic positions, something like, I don't know, like 60 something percent, 65% or something of academic positions are like 1 or 2 year positions. They're short, and so you don't know, like, am I going to be in the same town next year, or am I going to have to move across? Anyways. So basically, like, for kind of boring professional reasons having to do with moving around a lot, like I was sort of had some bread and butter courses that I would teach at these different places. And then as I, continued in my career and was able to be at a place for a little bit longer, I could, teach classes that are more in what I'm writing about and what I'm interested in. And so I got to be able to teach, those classes. So like for example, I taught a class called Computers and the Novels That Read Them. So sort of it's this idea of like thinking about novels. We read novels, but novels also read society, right? They tell us about society. And so I was really interested in how certain novels like kind of, read the computer, like help us think critically about our computing technology. So yeah, so I taught that class several years ago. And yeah, I mean, that's an example of the way we can use film or novels or whatever to think critically about the text.
Is speaking of your curriculum, there was two I just had to ask you about, because I saw the titles of the courses and I was like, that sounds right up my alley. So the first one I wanted to ask you about was Lit 707 AI and the Literature of Consciousness.
Oh yeah.
That sounds rad. Like,
it was great. Yeah. Well, so I'm really lucky to be at MIT, where, undergraduates they're interested in this technology, right? I mean, they have, a degree of like expertise where it's just like so fun to be in a classroom with, computer science students who are taking AI classes. They're like actually building AI systems, right? And then to pose a question about the AI system or about the technology from a humanistic perspective, from somebody who teaches literature, like that's a real privilege. I mean, it's really, really fun, because I can like sort of see the sort of like puzzle pieces slotting into each other as in the student's mind, right? Because they are encountering a kind of like technical set of problems in one class, in their computer science class, and then like a philosophical existential question in my class. And that's just really, really fun. But that class, the AI and the Literature of Consciousness class, was just so fun to read or to prepare for, because I was reading all of this philosophy and cognitive science on what it means to be a conscious being. Like, what is the nature of consciousness? I was, there's a long like history of people thinking about that question. And so as I was preparing for the class, I was reading all of that philosophy and, cognitive science and stuff. And I wanted to put that in conversation with science fiction that thinks about, computing systems that become conscious, and then also have the students who are in computer science building AI systems, like ask see if any of that stuff is relevant to their work. And yeah, it was really great. Like, for example, we read this fantastic novel by Louisa Hall called Speak. It's really just a wonderful novel. And Hall sort of puts these different characters in conversation with each other that are across about a 300 year period. And so like some are in the future. One is like a kind of a tech entrepreneur who created an AI system in the future that turned out to ruin a bunch of children's lives. And then the other was another character is a computer scientist from the 1970s who built a chat bot that's kind of a therapy bot. So the novel's just fantastic. And so I think like using novels that think about what it means to be conscious, and what's the nature of thought.
Right.
The novels raise those kinds of questions, and then to have the students put those questions in conversation with their technical work, is just so fun to see what they come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, let me ask you about that. I mean, since you're steeped in all this kind of stuff and doing the research, do you think, 'cause we've seen examples of the Turing test being passed and everything with some of these chat platforms and things like that, but do you think we'll actually achieve anything close to the singularity that everybody talks about, that, that we will create a true computer consciousness that dreams and has hopes and has fears? Do you think we'll ever do that, or it's going to be up to interpretation because it's all alien anyways, because it's not a human brain, but we're trying to mimic it? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you?
Yeah. I think, so about the Turing test, I actually think it's the wrong test, right? I mean, and I'm not the only one who said this, but like we think that like the video game, like remote control hates us, or the video game hates us. Like we're so liable to like think that this inanimate thing is actually conscious.
Exactly. Yeah.
Children do this with toys, whatever. So the Turing test, this idea of, can it convince me that it's conscious? It's kind of a bad test. Like, yes, it can.
Yeah.
Right.
I yell at Alexa on a daily basis. I think she hates me, and but it doesn't care about me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, so I think that, we can definitely create technology that passes the Turing test, because we did when like we invented the doll, right? I mean, but at the same time, the other question, I mean, I think that there will be something like a kind of inhuman consciousness that's created. I mean, I think that will happen quite soon, but I don't think sort of a version of what you were just saying. I think it'll be so alien that it's not a replication of human consciousness. It's something different, right? I mean, of course, I have no clue, but that's my guess based on the trajectory and what I understand the technologists to be doing. And so I think the outcome is, it's probably some form of self-aware system. But it's the nature of its self-awareness is different from ours, is my best guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The other course I just had to ask you about was the science fiction of freedom.
Oh,
what are you exploring in that course? That sounds rad too.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in that class, and so a lot of my teaching orbits around like philosophy and literature, or philosophy and film, and so in philosophy, the thought experiment is really important. Let me imagine the scenario and think about its implications. And, kind of in some ways, science fiction does a similar thing, right? You imagine a future world or whatever, or an alternative universe, and you think about its implications. And so that class, I put a bunch of thought experiments in philosophy in conversation with works of science fiction. And it was so fun because, one class we might read like, I don't know, like a libertarian philosopher's, imagining basically the Matrix, this scenario where we plug in and have experiences through a technology. Is that kind of experiment legitimate, authentic, whatever? Like, so there are thought experiments that ask those kinds of questions. And then the next class we would read whatever, like Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep,
Mhm.
And yeah, it just was so fun. I mean, so fun and so interesting to put like thought experiments in philosophy and
Mhm.
conversation with thought experiments in science fiction. And yeah, most of the conversations were about different aspects of what it means to be free. Like, what's the nature of freedom? Are we free, or are we actually just like fooling ourselves into thinking we're free?
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of questions that the different readings were posing.
No, that sounds right up my alley. I love that
That's
stuff.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your book, The Comedy of Computation, what was something like in your research that really just blew you away or sent you down the longest rabbit hole or most excited you? What was something that
Yeah.
really stood out for you?
So this is probably the weirdest aspect of the book, what I'm about to talk about. There was this film, Control Alt Delete, by Cameron Levine, directed by, and the film is really, really weird. So what happens is it's sort of set around Y2K, and a computer programmer is being tasked with kind of like updating computer systems for companies before Y2K so that their systems don't collapse. And he develops this weird fetish for computer terminals, and it gets graphic and awkward and just like very, very graphic and weird. And the film is sort of not quite cringe comedy, but that's sort of the flavor of it. And this set me down a rabbit hole of thinking about all the different ways that like filmmakers and others like imagine us like coupling with computers, like in a physical sense, because that's the central like activity of the film. And it's surprisingly common. Like the first films I could find where this happens were in the late 50s. So basically, since the technology has been public, people for whatever reason have imagined coupling with computers. And
Absolutely. I mean, it goes hand in hand with like any new, and it's something I've come across and, watching all these movies and doing research for them as well. Like it just seems, because of human nature that any new technology that is going to be, change the way we live our life, it seems like within seconds, how do we get porn on this? It's just, like no matter what we invent, how can we get porn onto this thing? And it's what's won media wars between, different formats and everything, like why VHS won over Betamax, why Blu-ray won over HD DVD. Whenever I was reading about your coupling stuff within those chapters, it wasn't shocking to me that like, cause even in these future movies I watch where it's like, for instance, bad example, but in the movie Demolition Man, there's a part where Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone put on these neural caps and they can trade thoughts.
I remember this.
While I'm watching this movie, I'm like, holy shit, you've just made a technology where you can transfer one person's thoughts to another. This is groundbreaking. This is bigger than the atomic bomb splitting the atom. You can actually relate to somebody like 1-to-1. There's no more buffering. And they use it for porn. It's like, come on, this could be such a breakthrough in the medical field or communications. And
right. Nope.
It's
That's
used
not
for
what
porn.
it's used for. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, we have like 3,000-year-old tablets of like basically pornographic images, right? So I get what you're saying totally. It's not surprising. I mean, I guess what was weird to me was that like in this film Control Alt Delete, like the computer isn't just like a medium for porn.
Right.
It
is itself.
a sexual object, right? Like it's treated. I mean, you see this in like Weird Science, right? With Lisa, who becomes, like a kind of like super intelligence that's sexualized, right? Yeah. And I guess I just, asked the question, like, why is it's not just a medium for sex. It's an object for sex, and like why does that happen? And so a lot of the sort of that dynamic was really strange to think through.
I bet.
And it's definitely a rabbit hole.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, since this podcast is movies and mainframes, I got a couple of questions for you before I let you go. Number one, what's your favorite comedy? Doesn't have to do with technology or anything, just straight up favorite. Your desert island comedy.
Oh, that's such a hard question.
It is, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have. I'm very sort of like promiscuous in my taste for comedy. Like I like so much stuff, and so many of them are very different from one another. I mean, I was recently at an academic conference and watched Blazing Saddles on the way home from flight home.
That would be my desert island comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, it's a complicated movie, and I think that's why I like it too. Like, it's just a very, very funny movie. I like comedies like that have these, like, the side characters are some of the best. Like the characters that like play no like real role in the plot, but just like pop up for 30 seconds and do something hilarious. That's like, that gets me every time. So Blazing Saddles would be up there. Yeah. Well, what about you?
Well, that's mine. It specifically because it has so many different kinds of comedy within within the movie, because you have where it's dealing with race and racial issues. So you're getting that comedy, that lens, but also it has just dumb, stupid comedy with Mongo and farting around the campfire. It's meta where they break out of the movie. It's got great wordplay, and then just all the performances. And plus, it's Mel Brooks. So, right. So that's mine, just because it has so many genres of comedy all within the same movie. That's why I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in contrast, like when I was a kid, I loved Andy Kaufman. And now I show like videos of Andy Kaufman to my kids, and they don't get it. Like they don't think it's funny whatsoever.
Right.
And I've sort of like, I can see where they're coming from, because it is so weird. But I think that kind of like tradition of also just making people feel so uncomfortable, I still find that pretty funny. I like to observe it though. Of course, I mean, this is kind of obvious, but I like to observe it, not to participate, not to be in the audience, but to watch the audience,
Exactly. It's funny to watch, but if I was in that nightclub where he's going to just read Charles Dickens to you and not break character, like, oh man, I paid money for this. Come on. But it's hilarious to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite college/academia movie, set within education? What is your favorite movie in that genre?
Ooh, man.
To give you some time, my desert island one would be Real Genius.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Like an academia movie. I mean,
but you got like Dead Poet Society, School Ties, Back to School, which it was either Real Genius or Back to School for me. I just love Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, for some reason, maybe just because I like have to like answer emails and like fill out forms, like the Dead Poet Society, that kind of like inspirational movie, it doesn't sit with me. Like, I don't know, something about it. Like,
oh, your email signature is not Carpe Diem or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, it's more mundane, you know what I mean? And like, I think that the ideal of those kinds of movies makes sense. But then you have to like grade papers till midnight every night or whatever. It feels like, The Chair, that show, The Chair, which it was a one season Netflix series. So it's not a movie, but it's a TV series that sort of like makes fun of basically an English department, and I mean, I thought it was funny. I thought it was. I mean, I'm not saying it's my favorite like academia like film or TV, but it kind of really gets at what I'm saying. Like, so much of the business of that show is just about the nonsense,
right? That
is the daily life of being a professor or being part of like a university. and yeah, I mean, so much of the daily experience is just kind of mundane.
No,
And
I
when
hear
it's not
you.
mundane, it's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in television news for like over 16 years. And so, I mean, same for me. Anytime I see these movies or television shows that deal with the ethics of journalism and getting on the air and we have to get it right. And, it's just like, no,
Yeah.
that's really nice. You think of it that way, but
Yeah.
that's not the day in, day out of the grind. And,
Right.
yeah.
But I mean,
so-
I also get like I appreciate that as an ideal, right? Like I like both for journalism and the sort of Dead Poet Society, like inspirational stuff. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I wish the job was. Like I wish that most of what I do is just inspire young people to like think about their lives, and it's just there's a lot of like bureaucratic stuff that you also have to deal with, right? And so it's not, you're just not always able to, do that.
Yeah. And lastly, do you have a favorite tech movie?
Ooh, favorite tech movie. I mean, so favorite in the sense of this, I enjoy, I enjoy watching this and could watch it repeatedly. I mean, I think like Strangelove is it's about nuclear technology,
Mhm.
obviously. And of course, at the end, there are computers. And like I could watch Strangelove ad infinitum, I think.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. Is that your
Yeah.
favorite Kubrick? Are you a
That's
2001 guy? Are you a Shining guy? Full Metal Jacket?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't
Nobody's
know.
Barry
It's like, it's
Lyndon,
sort of
so-
like, what's your favorite pizza?
Yeah.
Like there's different, it depends on my mood. Like,
Well, and that's the
the
great thing
occasion.
about Kubrick is he didn't just work in the same genre over and over and over again, like somebody like Scorsese, where you really do get the like, whoa, he's got sci-fi, he's got horror, he's got comedy, he's got existential dread. I don't know, whatever it is, but yeah. But for me, with Kubrick, like he does truly have three perfect films in Strangelove 2001 and The Shining, and they're all just completely different movies. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's apples and oranges between those three, right? Like you can't say one is better than the other because these are different films, right? But they're fantastic. I agree. Yeah.
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 I think my desert island tech movie would be Sneakers with Robert Redford and Bing Kingsley.
Oh,
It's a fun one. You ever seen that one?
no, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's great. It's 1992, all-star cast, like Sidney Poitier's in it, River Phoenix, Dan Aykroyd. It's great. It's a comedy.
What's it about? What's this?
So Robert Redford and his team of people, they're sneakers. They are penetration testing people. You hire them to see if they can break into your computer systems. And then of course they are hired to do a job that goes awry, and the mafia and the government get involved, and they realize they are holding on to a technology that there's not a government in the world that wouldn't kill them all for it. And so it's really fun. It's a comedy, but it's a thriller, and like I said, just great acting, great script.
Yeah, it sounds suspenseful.
The same people who wrote Sneakers also wrote War Games.
Oh,
So-
okay. Another
so-
great tech movie. Yeah.
Exactly. So it really just has that vibe of like, oh, there's some comedy, there's some feel good stuff, a little bit of romance, thrills, chills. So yeah, runs the gamut. Before I let you go, like I said, I found your book really interesting to read. Where would you tell our listeners to go to check out more about the book?
Yeah, so it's for sale on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and the other major like online retailers. It's published by Stanford University Press, so you can also purchase the book directly from the press.
Okay.
And if you go to the press's website, they also have like an excerpt from the introduction. They have some other like media links. So if you're interested, go check out Stanford's website.
Yeah, and listeners, if you head over to thwack.com, look for Movies and Mainframes, I'll have a link to where you can check out more about the book. Well, Ben, it has been really nice talking to you. Thanks again for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
And listeners, I always want to hear from you. Like I said, head over to thwack.com, look for movies and mainframes, leave me a comment. And like I said, you can find more on Benjamin Mangrum's book. And you can always reach me at moviesandmainframes@solarwinds.com. Well, that's going to do it for another episode. We are going to log off, and until the next time, we will catch you later. Bye, everyone.
Movies
And